the next, well, 20 minutes or so, I will talk about how to craft emotion-centric customer interactions, and in particular, also why the emotion-centric customer interactions. Just a few sentences about, well, a few words about myself. So my background is actually artificial intelligence, and basically my expertise is natural language processing, and I spent many years in academia, publishing the work, writing books in text analytics before I moved on to the industry. And I have been lucky enough to work on some exciting projects like Apple Siri and many others before I created sentient machines. Now, I created sentient machines because of the issue of miscommunication that I think was all around me. And I think I've set up the mission to actually, with sentient machines, help humans become better communicators. Now, of course, and I guess this is why I'm here today, is that I believe that at the core of every communication is emotion, and we as human beings connect through it. However, I would also argue, and everything I say in this talk is actually based on analyzing millions of interactions of our customers. So I would say that a lot of people are like, we take a lot of things we can or cannot do for granted. And I think empathy is one of those things where, we just think, well, that's natural, we can just do that. But actually it is quite difficult, and some of our data show that a lot of people are just not very good at recognizing emotions, not very good at responding back to someone else's emotion, and we could go into the psychology of that and so on. But I personally believe that AI has a big impact to basically big potential to change this, and that's also why I believe that there is a new era of empathetic and ethical, I want to add, human-machine collaboration. And ethical, I think, is important, and I am very pleased to see a lot of movement in this area in the last few years, because I think it is important to understand, who is behind the AI and all of it, and what is the principle. But this new era, we were talking about pandemic and what has changed with the pandemic and so on, and I think with the pandemic we have seen a demand for more emotional centric customer experience. Now I think some companies have been more acceptable of the emotion centric customer experience before the pandemic, but I think what has happened, so I think pandemic hasn't caused it, it has just accelerated the need of the customer emotions. And I think Torsten mentioned the increased anxiety and so on, and I think it's definitely when you nowadays speak to your customer, you have to think about many other things, not just would you buy from me or not. So so why and what I mean by this emotion-centric customer interactions. Just to give an example, and I'm sure everyone here today has had this experience where whatever call center they were trying to interact with had perhaps some challenges. Well, certainly that was my experience, and the emails, like this is actually an actual email I received from a company I love and I am a loyal customer to for many years. And well, basically because of the pandemic, they were telling me that unless I have something very urgent, I shouldn't be trying to get in touch with them, which is fine. The only problem with that is, and this is a company that has like top customer experience according to my opinion, because I do feel very valued. But the trouble there is that prioritization is based on my judgment. So if I am a customer, I'm making a judgment of, if my issue is urgent or not. And I think this is the problem, because everyone's problems are their biggest problems, so it's all, urgency is very relative. So what if they, did something different, which is encouraged me to get in touch, and they'll try to help. But maybe they won't answer my query immediately because it's not because they decide it's not urgent enough, or maybe the interaction won't be as personalized as I would have hoped, or I would get under some other circumstances. So I think certainly, and maybe this is where I am very kind of biased, because I am very obsessed with optimization and AI, and I want everything to be better if it can be better. But I do believe that the call center that is based around customer feelings. So you could almost start with the feelings of your customer and then make further decisions. And I think this, like in this particular case, is about, is this customer, for example, vulnerable? Do I need to respond to this query immediately, or can this wait, 5-10 minutes or one day? And I think having a technology to do something that would be very, very powerful for many, many companies. So because the decision is left, and I believe that many people will not be waiting 30 minutes because it will just be optimized. Now, you could just say, well, this is a very extreme situation, so it's not really something that, that's relevant, because, it might come once in a lifetime, or it might never happen. So why are we even talking about this? Well, I think, and I guess today we are very much focused around, understanding how our emotions driving the world around us. And I think certainly in the contact centers, it is the case that emotions drive outcomes. And I will back this up with some of the data we have analyzed, but from your customer emotions, and these could be, positive, negative, it doesn't really matter. I've listed here. So in our platform, we go very detailed on like different customer emotions that are derived from tone of voice, from what they say, are they confused? Are they hesitating? Sometimes emotion, it doesn't have to be the emotion, that is very, very extreme. So the way you respond, of course, to these emotions will then guide, your customers' decisions and outcomes. So are they loyal customer? Are they churning? Are they buying from you, and so on? And of course, eventually it will also impact your promoter scores, customer satisfaction scores, customer effort scores, and, all the other scores you have. And now, just to back this up with some of the data. So we have, over the years, developed what we call a sentiment index. And this sentiment index, and it's kind of derived from many, many things, but I'll just list, for example, customer sentiment, agent sentiment, the ability of the agent to turn, customer frustration into happiness, empathy in the agent behavior, listening skills. So all of these are combined when we analyze conversations, and this one index is kind of indicating the quality of, how this call went, or how this, conversation went. And to the left, we basically took the calls where we had the information about successful sales and not successful sales, and we could see that the higher, like 20, almost 27% higher index is for successful sales as opposed to not successful sales. Now, to the right, I think is even more interesting, because so first of all, if you just look at, so these, maybe I'll just say what these scores are. So customer satisfaction agent 1 is the lowest score for customer satisfaction when the customer is rating agents, and customer satisfaction agent 5 is the highest score for rating agents. Customer satisfaction resolution 1 is not related to the agent. This is whether the customer was happy with how their query was resolved or not. And this, where the left diagram is about sales calls, the right one is about inbound support calls. So what we see here, which I think is very interesting, that, for agent performance, we definitely see that the sentiment score is almost like directly proportional to higher. So higher sentiment index means also higher customer satisfaction for agents. But for resolution, it's not really the case. Even though the sentiment index is higher here, then for the agents, the score of 1 that tells us that basically people are not happy. So, and I think this will, I'll explain this a little further, I think, with some of the other diagrams. But just further on like emotional dynamics. So I mentioned that we have an algorithm that's it's basically monitoring the feelings of the customer throughout the conversation, and how are these feelings changing. Of course, you always want them to go, you know, upward. So you want, you know, frustration to become happiness. You want maybe neutral or positive sentiment to become excitement. And this again diagram is related to the sales calls, where I think that the most interesting here is the positive to excitement change, which in successful calls we've seen 5.2 times more than in not successful calls. So I think this is something well to consider when training your agents to you know, to be good at, you know, at selling over the phone. Now looking at the same algorithms, the same emotional dynamics kind of within the call for inbound support calls. It's interesting that the same, well, if there is this shift between positive, well, from positive to excitement within a call, then none of the agents or none of the customer satisfaction scores would be very low. Which you would expect. What I've said earlier for resolution, and I think this is again, I think the proof that it's not only about the communication, there is actually a lot to be done about like how effective this communication is, and is this actually solving my problem? And I think this diagram to the right is basically saying that, you know, even if you are able to turn, even if your agents are amazingly trained to turn a negative conversation into positive, you still might not eliminate or your lower customer satisfaction scores. And it's interesting that here we have a combination of, you know, resolution and agent, both at the lowest. And I think, you know, with emotion, I mean, it is an interesting one. I mean, generally the best thing to do, of course, is to eliminate the negativity, eliminate frustration, because even if you're able to turn it around, it might not be that useful. Now how do you do that? How do you eliminate the negative emotion, and what do you do about building the emotion-centric contact center? So I'm going to talk briefly about actions, and then I'll spend more time on communication, only because I think the data I wanted to share is kind of divided in that way. So first of all, I think to build the emotion-centric customer experience, I think it's very, very important to understand what your customers like, what they don't like. And, you know, a lot of companies use customer feedback forms, manual call listening, all these things to collect a lot of feedback. And this is all fine. I will just show here, and I'm only showing it because it's not, it's basically derived or screenshot from our platform, just as an example of, you know, what you can do with the real-time customer insights. But of course, any way you collect insight from social media, from anywhere, of course, you could do the same. So here we just have topics. So within Sentient Machines platform, everything is kind of crossed. Every single emotion is also, well, first of all, grouped into negative and positive. So, you know, fears and confusions, all these things, like we group them, and then we cross that by a topic. So what are they, you know, angry about, or what are they happy about? So here we have the app, cards, opening accounts. So these are different topics within these conversations. And if I say, well, within the app there is most frustration, then I could go further using what we call bubbles. And these bubbles are kind of just trying to go further, go deeper into what, you know, what about the apps. And here we have an example with Huawei phone not working, and, you know, it's designed to work, but some users are having problems and so on. So you can see, you know, you can actually get this piece of information, go to your development team and basically fix an issue with Huawei phone, because a lot of your customers are complaining about it. And then if you want to look at different aspects, so every single bubble would basically indicate a different aspect of the conversation. And in this case, we are talking about, I'm trying to download the app on my phone, but it keeps freezing, and so on and so forth. And again, another thing you could take and, you know, give to your development team and improve your business. So I think even though we are talking about emotion-centric customer experience, and you would expect, well, actually it is all about how you communicate. I think one part, well, as important as communication is, you know, your product, your service, and what you do with the feedback that your customers give you. And, you know, what you as a business need to do today to eliminate all of these causes of frustration, understanding, you know, what features people like, or what people excite, what features excite them or not excite them, why are they buying, why are they not buying, for example. All of these things you could derive from all these customer interactions, and you know, have I think the emotion-centric could be the lack of negative emotions as well, you know, because that will be then driving positive emotion. So this is just one example, like on you know, how what you can do, and of course, you know, there's many other things, as I mentioned, but I think I will now move to the communication aspect. And this is on, you know, how you communicate with your customers. And here we did like a study with one of our customers' data, and derived 5 elements that made impact. Now, I should just say that these 5 elements might not apply to all calls. This was done on the sales calls, so some are kind of I think some could be different than in the inbound support, but empathy is a very interesting one, and I put it as the first one because I think it's one of those that, you know, of course you should be empathetic. It's like, you know, you should be encouraged, but I think what I'll show you in a second might surprise you, maybe. I was certainly surprised. If you look at basically how much empathy there is in you know, the calls that have been ranked positive or negative, and it's very interesting that the significant empathy doesn't actually help with removing low customer resolution scores. If you see almost 25% here of empathy within calls that have been given the lowest customer satisfaction scores, and this is what I was mentioning earlier. You know, if you don't focus on the resolution, it doesn't really help how empathetic you are. You know, your customers won't be happy. Whereas with the agent performance, of course, you know, it has a massive impact. So if you don't have any empathy, you know, the scores are very low, and a lot of empathy is the highest score. So I think that is I think very interesting, again, you know, the highlight of the importance of the resolution, you know, in addition to how we train our agents and how we communicate, you know, with our customers. So we have also measured the empathy in the sales calls. And first, this one shows that, you know, more empathy means, you know, that more empathy is present basically in successful sales. So 15%. As opposed to 8% in not successful sales. And this is kind of in line with, shall we say, the books, like everyone will be saying, you know, of course that is expected. But actually the study we did before this one on a slightly different data set was showing the opposite. So it was showing that the empathy was, well, more present in not successful calls than successful. Now, it's not actually a very significant difference. However, even, you know, even being very similar is quite surprising. So what we have found when we analyzed this, because they were like done on 2 different clients' data, this one, the sales calls included retention calls, and in retention calls, there were a lot of calls where people wanted to cancel, and then they just were trying to offer them better deals, and, you know, I'm trying to understand why are they canceling and so on. So this is why there was a lot of empathy in not successful calls as opposed to you know, successful calls, even though they were well, classified as sales, you know, technically speaking. So I guess the conclusion from these 2 case studies was that the empathy is great, but not enough. And if overused, empathy can be counterproductive. Now, this for this, I want to show you this slide, which don't worry about the details, only pay attention to the red line, and I'll explain what red line is. So So basically these three diagrams show different emotions. So empathy, different change of sentiment and so on. And going from left to right, we see that there is like more emotion of that particular kind present in those scores. But when we look at the red diagrams, all of them have the exact same trend. It's just that some of them arrive, you know, at the peak faster, but all of them arrive at the peak and then they go down and they never kind of recover. So all of them follow the similar trend. Even this one kind of tries to go up and then again goes down. And I think what we have learned from this is that, you know, you do need a certain amount of motion, but you don't really want to be dragged into it. You don't really want to go on and on about, you know, why your customers are not happy. You want to try and propose a solution and move on. And I think so acknowledging, you know, maybe their unhappiness, acknowledging what's happened and then moving on is much more effective. And again, when it comes to sales calls over the phone. Then because overdoing it could be counterproductive and actually, you know, might not, you're validating your own mistakes in too many for too long, and that might not be very, very good. So the next aspect is personalization. And I think we mentioned briefly in the previous panel, you know, the importance of about knowing your customer and, you know, understanding, you know, their personas and so on. And this table basically shows the different techniques that we measured for different agents. So we have nine agents, and at the bottom we see the success rate for these agents. So the first one was successful in 33.6% of the calls, which is incredible. And the lowest score was 6.6 rate for agent 9. So what is interesting about this table is, and we will talk about all these others. For now, we are just focusing on this personalization element, because what really stands out here is that this is the only agent that had this kind of ticked. None of the other agents were actually doing this. And what this means is that the agents was very knowledgeable about the customer. So they knew everything about their buying behaviors prior to the call. They knew all about what the customer, you know, liked or didn't like and so on. And they were very, very well prepared. And you could see the impact they had on the sales, because, I mean, this is like 3 times more than the average of you know, everyone else, which I think is outstanding. So it just shows the importance of, you know, creating, like what I said earlier, the absence of emotion sometimes can create a deeper connection. You know, showing someone that you care, showing someone that you know about what they like and dislike is going to create deeper connection than, you know, anything else, pretty much, according to, you know, what we've seen here. The third element is reassurance. So this basically means being able to quite early in the conversation explain to your customers that, you know, there are no risks. You know, you are focusing on solving their problem. You are focusing on trying to, you know, find the best benefits that there are. You are focusing on removing risks, you know, and all of these things. And I think this is what we have seen from this study, is that we had to kind of mention this quite early in the conversation for it to be a successful sales call. And of course, listening actively is something that, you know, we can't, we have measured this separately. We actually have a score within the platform that does this, and it's well, very, very important. The fourth element is the tone of voice. Now, tone of voice is again, like you could just say, well, you know, you need to use positive language and so on. And we at Sentient Machines have developed what we call a positive smart language. So this is a language that's not only using kind of positive words, but it's also very effective. So it's very kind of focused on solving the problems and so on. And using this kind of language alone, it's much less effective than if you combine it with an upbeat tone. And I think, you know, this again, you could say, well, it's obvious, but actually from the data we've analyzed, we had about 2 or 3 people doing this, which, you know, is very, very low. Of course, engagement with your customer is very important. So, you know, constantly asking them questions and again, just establishing that connection. And finally, the small talk. I think the small talk is just like empathy, has been around like a lot of advice on what to do and not to do. And I think on this particular study, we have found that, you know, you really, really need to limit your small talk. Doesn't mean you don't need to be friendly, but you know, you do need to kind of listen to your customers and not go into too much details about their holidays or football matches, unless of course they force you to go in that direction. So listening, you know, to your customers, acknowledging whatever they have to say and moving on. I think there's a very big emphasis in this particular case on moving on, where, you know, this was very, very important. And finally, around fake, so we've heard about fake news, fake everything these days. So I think this study again confirmed that, you know, fake is not cool. So people don't like if you fake apologize and fake empathy. And you know, you need to own your company failures again and move on. So so in summary, to build an emotion-centric contact center, you need to combine, you know, your actions, so what you do, as well as how you communicate. And in terms of communication, you need to use the empathy, but not too much. You need to know your customer very well and apply personalization. You need to reassure them very early in the conversation that, you know, you're focused on solving their problem and, you know, what is it there for them. You need to use upbeat tone of voice. And finally, you need to limit your small talk. Well, thank you very much. That is all I wanted to share, and I will take now any questions.
All right, Danica, we had a question from Peter Dorrington about identification of vulnerable customers and how that affects the approach to a call. What are your thoughts on vulnerable customers?
So I think it's very, very tricky. I think it depends on the business. I think so. For example, finance industry, we work a lot with the finance industry, and, you know, they already are aware, you know, of vulnerable customers, and they try and do this. But of course, they do this like later, you know, not in real time. So I think emotions are very, very crucial to this identification, because you could look into how, you know, how are my basically customers, how are they talking? Are they anxious? Are they confused? Does it make sense what they're saying? All of these things. And again, I think it has to be done in context with the business. You know, why are they calling me? Is it the health issues, or is it their bank account, or, you know, is it their grocery shopping? So, but I think emotion and tone of voice, which is what we do a lot, is very, very, I think it's critical actually for this identification. And I think it's definitely something we need to see implemented more and more. And I'm hoping for that to happen.
And going in the other direction, Anna Hilda Galban asks, how do you know that you're showing empathy?
How do you know? I think that's a very good question. I think empathy, it's from our points of view, it's acknowledging. I think acknowledging customers' emotions, customers' feelings. So whatever that is, you know, that they're feeling, I think you just need to show your understanding. So if someone is just saying, and this has to be present within the tone of voice and words, because if you're just saying, you know, sorry about that, but you know, you obviously don't really care, this can be felt. So I think, I mean, how do you know? I mean, if you I mean, we know because we have algorithms for this, but we also have spent a lot of time defining this and training the algorithms to do this. And I think you just have to be very kind of particular about what an honest empathy is. And I think people can feel this. I mean, that's why I said don't fake it, because I think even in some of the cases we've analyzed, people try with the language, because someone obviously told them, if you say this, you know, but it just doesn't work. You really need to mean it.